Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Kieno with STEMwithKieno.com, and this is another video for my SIFT people. If you don't know what the SIFT is the Standard Instrument for Flight Training exam, and it is a test that you will need to pass if you want to enter the Warrant Officer Flight Training Program, or if you're going to be an aviation officer, a commissioned officer. So this is for, commission and warrant officers in the United States Army that wish to be aviators. So a lot of times in a lot of questions, you read the book and it probably is not as descriptive as we would probably like them to be. And this is why I like simulators, because this is a visual aid and it kind of helps explain things. So let's talk a little bit about some of the components. All right. This is a rotary wing aircraft. You could have rotary wing or you could be fixed wing. This is rotary wing because the main rotor up top rotates, and that's how lift is produced. Sorry about that. Let me silence that. Okay, and we're back. So this is a really beautiful model, and I am trying to see if we can't go to a lock spot view. Okay, so let's talk about the main rotor. This is a semi-rigid main rotor system. The main rotor is one of the major components of rotary wing aircraft. We have a cockpit. We have the fuselage that houses the cockpit, cargo, and passengers. Okay, inside we can't see it, but there is a transmission in here, and we also have a power plant. We have the landing gear, and we have a anti-torque rotor. So these are some of the major components of an aircraft, and you could be questioned about this. So you can actually see what I'm talking about. You can see the main rotor. You can't see the transmission and the power plant. You can see the fuselage, and you can see that that's where the pilot, passenger, pilot, co-pilot, and cargo, and passengers could be housed. And then we have the anti-torque rotor. Now, let's go to a top-down view, and let's zoom in. Okay, so I didn't want to get that close. Okay, so basically, this is the tail rotor, or what we call a anti-torque rotor. And when this main rotor starts spinning, it's going to produce a force. And Sir Isaac Newton's third law of motion states that for every force, there's an equal opposite force. So if we hit force going one way, there's going to be equal opposites of force trying to turn us in the opposite direction. And our tail rotor, by way of anti-torque pedals, helps us keep control, or keep that directional control in check. Let's come on back into the cockpit and look around. All right. Some other test questions that could come up. And I'm going to do more videos, so don't think like, okay, well, this is the only video he's ever going to do. No. Let's talk about some of our basic flight instruments. We have a airspeed indicator that tells us how fast we are going to be flying through the air. It has nothing to do with ground speed, and I will go into the differences in a later video. We have the attitude indicator. As we look outside of the aircraft, we have a horizon. So if we're ever in instrument meteorological conditions, this would be the nose of our helicopter. And basically, I guess, think of it like your shoulders. And if we tilt left or right, which I will demonstrate, the horizon stabilizes, and it kind of tells us which way it's up in what we call IMC, or instrument meteorological conditions. We have a barometric altimeter, and this tells us how high we are at sea level. We're currently positioned at Tango Tango November, which is Trenton Mercer Airport, at Mercer County Airport, and we are 231 feet above sea level. We have a radar altimeter. The radar altimeter, okay, well, our barometric altimeter reads mean sea level, how high we are in relation to sea level, and then the radar altitude gives us an altitude, what we call HEL, height above ground level. Okay, so even though we are 213 feet above sea level, our radar altitude is 0 because the ground, we're right on the ground that's below us. So it's 0. And I'll go into detail about that. We have our directional gyro or heading indicator. We cross-check that with the magnetic compass here. We have a clock, or we have a Omni bearing selector for VOR navigation, and we have our turn coordinator. So those are the instruments that I'm going to go into now, and you can stop and pause, and you can Google, do your own research. I also have a couple videos out there on how each and every one of these instruments work. So it would be good to have and know that information. Definitely if you're preparing for the SIFT, you want to know as much as possible, and make sure you check in every Saturday at 2 p.m. 1400 Eastern, because I do a live stream answering SIFT questions. So some other SIFT questions that could come up. All right. First, we have our anti-torque pedals, and you can see them moving right now. We move those with our feet. That is one of the primary flight controls. We have the collective. It's just moving just a little bit. All right. And we will go into detail about how these work. And in addition to that, we have our collective, which we can raise and lower. Okay, so the collective, the cyclic, and the anti-torque rotor pedals, or anti-torque pedals. I keep calling them rudders because I do fixed wing as well, and all right. Outside view. I want to go back to my lock spot view, and I want to know, because one simulator I use in DCS, you can actually see the move. So I was just testing it out for this simulator, and that does not happen. So couple things I wanted to address. Now, this is not the aircraft that you will run into at Fort Rucker, but I just wanted to do a video. I had a Kiowa simulator, and I'm actually still going to get that Kiowa simulator, but the UH1 Huey is what I basically had the checklist procedures for. And where are you at? That's another lesson I was doing, guys. And there we go. So basically what I wanted to press upon you guys is there's actually a checklist that we're going to run through, and you actually need to follow the procedures of this checklist in order for this thing to start properly. If we don't follow this checklist, the simulator will not start. So that's why I always think simulators are great, especially when they're this realistic, because it just gives you an idea of some of the procedures that you're going to be experiencing when you go through your training. Okay, so without further ado, we will go ahead and go through our checklist. Our door is it's closed already. Sometimes this head tracking doesn't work, but have no fear. We can always go to the overhead panel. Okay. And the first thing we want to do is we want to turn our battery on. Now, when we turn that battery on, you're going to hear a sound, and don't be alarmed. That is our low RPM warning. The helicopter is talking to you, and it's basically saying, hey, your helicopter is in a low RPM condition, and that is not good, especially if we want to be flying. So when we turn this battery on, you're going to hear that noise. And no worries, we can silence it. We'll go back to the virtual cockpit position, and we'll go to our center console. And you know what? What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go to our center console so you can see it. All right. So we're going to silence that low RPM audio, which we can see right there. We hit that, and the noise goes off. Another thing we have here is our annunciator panel. And our annunciator panel is kind of like the aircraft communicating with you. It is actually telling you, hey, pilot, this is what's wrong with me. So we'll zoom in a little bit. We can see that we have low engine oil pressure. transmission oil pressure, we need the hydraulic pressure, left fuel boost, right fuel boost, engine fuel pump, DC generator, so, and the IFF. So the aircraft is actually talking to you, communicating with you, and we want all this to be dark. Okay, we don't want any of this to be lit, and it's lit because we're in the starting procedure. So, in the before engine start phase, you know, don't get alarmed by this. The aircraft is just talking to you, and it's like saying, "Hey, you know, this is what's wrong with me." Okay, so you're going to see something change when we turn this fuel on, which we'll do now, and see you saw those lights go out. So the left fuel boost, right fuel boost, and engine fuel pump is not an issue when we turn the fuel to the on condition. All right. This switch is also guarded. Okay, so we can't just you can't really see the guards. If we go to a side view, virtual cockpit. All right. So if we go to a side view, we can see that, you know, at night, if we were filling around on this panel, this is not a switch that we would want to be playing with. Okay, we don't want to inadvertently knock it off, because then we would not be pumping fuel to the engine, and that would result in a really bad day. All right, so our battery is on. We've gone to our center console. We've silenced a low RPM horn. Our fuel is on. We'll go back to the overhead. And bear with me, guys, because this is actually the first time I'm actually looking at the simulator. I kind of know the panels and where everything is, but you know, this simulator is a little bit new to me, but it's all right. I've been in a Huey before, and so it doesn't really matter the simulator type. It's just navigating through this. All right, so we're gonna put our generator. It is on the start position, which is good. Our collective, we're going to look at our collective, and we want to rotate that into the, you know, now that we have our fuel condition on, so we want to rotate this all the way left and this way. So this is kind of like your gas pedal in a sense, because when we raise the collective and lower the collective, it takes a larger or lesser bite of air, producing vertical lift. So we take that, we rotate it to full and then idle. We'll go to our center console, and we will go to the top. Okay, so there's a couple things we want. We want our force trim on, and we want our hydraulic condition on. All right, and that checks. And we will go to the start position in a moment here, or we'll engage our starter. So we'll go back to our virtual cockpit. All right, now the starter is right here next to the collective right here. All right, a couple things that we want to look for. All right, we're going to be looking at this guy. All right, so we want this to go to 30 before we release it. So we're actually going to hold this down, and see that our rotor is spinning. Ten. 20. 30, and releasing starter. And she'll stabilize. Now notice we have more lights off, so our helicopter is becoming happier and happier. Let's go to our center console again. So and a little bit too tight. Let me pull back. Okay. So now we have our instrument, inverter, and IFF. All Alright, so come back to the overhead. So the helicopter is just telling you, hey, you know, this is wrong, hey, that's wrong, and it's giving you an opportunity to correct it. Let's get some lighting on here. And one thing that I did not do, because I did not put it in the checklist, the anti-collision lights should have been on prior to starting the engine. What this does is a lot of times you'll have ground crew working around you, and they may have on hearing protection. Okay, so with the anti-collision lights on, if they had hearing protection on, you know, they could visually look at you and say, okay, that engine's about to start. So a couple other things. On the right-hand side, we have green lights. On the left-hand side, we have red lights. And on the tail, we have the white anti-collision light. So at nighttime, for nighttime conditions, if all I saw was these white lights, that would tell me that I'm following or I'm behind the helicopter at night. If I was approaching this helicopter and I'm approaching from the right side because I see the green, and that tells me that I'm approaching this helicopter from the right side. And 9 times out of 10, this helicopter is going to be going from my left to the right. If I was on this side, we have the red lights, all right, and that would tell me that I'm approaching this aircraft's left side. And 9 times out of 10, if this helicopter is in forward motion, it would be going from my right to the left. Okay, so lights, aircraft lighting, I've heard that has come up. Another one, definitely a heliport question. If this was a designated heliport, like basically a heliport, no airport here, we would see a white, green, and yellow rotating beacon. So, you know, I'm just dumping all these little possible SIFT questions you guys can get as we go along. All right, so let's get back in. All right. So again, we want to scan the panel. There's a couple other additional items that we need to take care of. IFF is on. And this panel is slightly different because the ones that I'm used to don't even we have our nav comm here. So that's pretty cool. Let's see, can't rotate this button. Alright, I think the nearest ADF to this airport is a 369er. Alright, we don't have any armament, but we can see the different panels. We can bright or dim this and go to overhead panel. So we'll come back to our center console and we'll see that the annunciator panel is dark. Okay, so that tells us that, look, we have a happy helicopter. And a happy helicopter is a great helicopter. Right? Let's come on back to the virtual cockpit mode. Okay, and everything looks good there. And good to go. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the throttle and we're going to, and you'll hear the RPMs increase. Now, I don't know if you heard it, but we'll come back to the center console. And basically what happened was this low PM, when we increase the throttle, this actually kicks back into audio. So at this point, we don't want to be in a low RPM condition. We don't want our main rotor to be in a low RPM condition, because that would mean that we're not going to maintain lift. That is required. Okay, we have some other things here. We have our landing light. We can turn that on. And we will just go ahead and we'll just go through some basic maneuvers. Now, this simulator is from flightsimulator.com. No, Flight Simulator on Steam, Microsoft Flight Simulator. And okay, so we have a fully functional aircraft, and basically what we're going to do is first we're going to look left and right, and we're going to make sure that there are no obstructions. Now remember, our primary flight controls: anti-torque pedals, cyclic, and our collective. We're going to gently raise the collective. Right? And this is why I recommend the head tracking software, because we're going to have to be doing a lot of looking around. Operating a helicopter is way different than operating a fixed-wing aircraft. So we're going to raise the collective. All right, we're raising it now. You can see the dust kicking up. Okay, and we have ourselves in a nice hover. Okay, we're hovering above the ground. And this is a SIFT question as well. When how's a SIFT question worded? It's like, what is the flight condition when your helicopter seems motionless, or seems to be positioned moving? It's like motionless over the ground or something like that. But this is the situation here. Our aircraft is in a hover. Nice, beautiful hover going on. Okay, so we're in a hover. Now, what we could do at this point is we could operate our anti-torque pedals and gently press the right one, and our nose should go right. I'm just going to gently do it. Okay, so this is the right anti-torque pedal. Just gently, and be very easy on the controls. We don't want any pincher action going on. All right, and I'm hitting the left anti-torque pedal. So you can see me hitting the left pedal. You can see our nose is moving to the left, and we're back in our normal, or the position we started. Again, just tap gently the right anti-torque pedal. Watch the nose go right, and also use a fixed reference out there to kind of gauge how much or how little you turn. All right, so you want to be nice and easy, and then we'll come back to the left. Okay, so that is our anti-torque pedal. All right, now if we increase the collective, if we raise this up higher, we'll get even more altitude. Right. That is our collective. We've raised our collective, and we can see ourselves rising. We can look at our altimeter. Our altimeter, radar, and barometric altimeter is going up. If we want to lower, we'll easily just gently lower the collective. We're dropping it down. You saw it lower. And we'll start to lose altitude. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to gently push forward and add collective at the same time, and a little bit of right anti-torque pedal. And when we push the cyclic, when we push that forward, our nose will lower a little bit. And we will start moving forward. Translational lift starts taking place, and we're looking good. So be very gentle on the controls. Don't try to like be a fighter pilot just jockeying the stick all over the place. And what I recommend you guys do, if you have the simulator, I recommend you have a head tracking, so when you look around, the view moves with your head, because especially when you're landing this thing, you can't do it like or it's very hard, I should say. Now, if we want to go really, really fast, push forward. All right. Let's turn west. Clear right, turning right. Let's get ourselves positioned over the Delaware River. I told you guys, all my SIFT subscribers, I told you I was going to be doing more and more videos for you guys. And I love it. Love it, love it, love it. Okay, we're currently westbound, and that is the Delaware River. That looks like the Scudder's Fall Bridge. Man, we got traffic down there and everything. Okay, we're going to head southbound. Clear left. Turning left. So it's like looking before you leap. So you hear me verbally announce clear left, turning left. You saw me look to make sure there were no other aircraft around. And we're flying by visual reference, so we always want to keep our head on the swivel. We're always looking around for other aircraft that may be in the area. Okay, we're not just like eyes in here on the instrumentation. We could be doing that if we were flying under instrument flight rules, but that is not necessary as we have a partly cloudy day today. Down here to our 11 o'clock position is the city of Trenton. And, so if you look sideways, our helicopter is in a slightly nose-down attitude, which is confirmed by our attitude indicator here. So just think of this as your nose of the helicopter, and that dashed dotted line horizontally is your horizon. Our altitude is currently about 1,300 feet above sea level. So, although this is not the helicopter you will meet at Fort Rucker, I just wanted to kind of get you guys used to the cockpit panel, procedures, and stuff like that. The procedure will be different in the aircraft that you run into at Flight Rucker, and your instructor will brief you on how to correctly operate within that platform. But I just want to kind of give you guys a nice little demo. I will be doing some more videos in this aircraft. Clear left, turn to left. And that's pretty much all I want to cover in this video. Definitely stay tuned for more videos as we will be addressing more SIFT questions concerning Army Aviation Information. There's our airport there. We can see the visual approach slope indicator. Those lights to the left. That's with that. Like every video, we'll just do a quick little flyby. See you guys later.